Now.
I can remote.
Can you hear us?
We can hear you now. You're not on mute anymore.
Okay. Well, hi everybody. So Olin is out today dealing with kind of a emergency thing. So I will be cheering today. So bear with me. But welcome and it's good to see everybody. And I guess I will call the meeting to order and approve the minutes from the meeting on January 23rd.
Move approval.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'll move approval.
Perfect. Thank you. Perfect. Okay, great. And then the next item is update from our executive director, Amy.
All right. Greg, Melly, and Reed, can you see the presentation?
Yes.
Yes, we can see it.
Go with file. View, I'm sorry. View. Full screen one, 2/3 of the way down.
Perfect. All right, now hopefully you can see it better. So this is the first time we're trying a director's report. Next meeting in May, Kim will do this for us, but today it's me, so. All right, so first and foremost are the 3 priorities that the commission identified in our first annual report. And that's grants contractor, Oahu Business Connector, and incubation and acceleration. So I'm happy to say that our solicitation for the grants contractor was posted. We have received applications, and there is a committee review process underway. And so we're hoping to be able to select a contractor and work with them over the next year to 2 years, however long we can stretch out the $250,000. And this grants contractor will help OER to develop the capacity amongst our program managers to go after federal competitive grants. So helping us to sort of prospect to identify what's out there in our priority areas, not just because a grant is in a particular area, but again, focused on our priorities and looking in those particular areas. They can help with the grant writing. They can help with the application and editing, the actual submission. But I think the most exciting thing when we've talked to the city council about this is that they'll help us develop a learning lab for folks across the city to understand the process for applying for federal grants. And because this is something, whether it's congressional delegation or the city council or whoever, they want us to do better. So you guys aren't alone as commission members, want us, wanting the city to improve their ability to get competitive federal grants. And the last part of that is kind of like a leave behind best practices. So whether it's, positions or mechanisms to actually do this, in the end, we're really excited to get this kicked off and the work underway. Secondly, launch of the Oahu Business Connector, March 5. Thank you, Deb, for coming. I believe Eliza, you were also there. Melly was there. Thank you. We saw Reed, Olin. It was wonderful to see everyone. And the March 5th was the actual press conference with the mayor. So that went off well too. But the one to really follow up on here is, this is David right there with the brownish reddish hair. That's Constancio, who already works in our Office of Innovation Technology Program Manager. But David, starting in April, will be our fellow for 2.5 years. We got a little over $300,000 to fund his position from the Economic Development Administration. So they received over 500 applications across the country to get one of these Economic Recovery Corps fellows. And Constancio was one of the main, movers and shakers in our office to help us make this happen. So we have another staff person coming on board, and he is what they call a mid-career economic development professional. So he's going to really be a major focus of our incubation and acceleration work. I'm sorry, the picture. Embarrassing. Will it allow me to? Hopefully we've also got this.
And I had become mayor. I love this program for what it represents because it really does speak to really the essence of our business community. Having spent more than 40 years in local broadcast television, I know for a fact that our community is driven by, is inspired by, is successful because of our small businesses. But so many of these small businesses, go into it with a great idea, big hearts, and a willingness to work 20 hours a day, but oftentimes lacking the acumen, the resources, or the know-how to really help them in all the dynamics, if you will, of running a business. What this is designed to do, and Melissa said it very well, is really support young entrepreneurs with their ideas on a lot of different levels to create success. And that's the one thing I go back to the post-COVID environment right now. Irrespective of the fact we may be doing better than we had thought at this point, we nonetheless took a big hit. We lost a lot of small businesses, a lot of people from the workforce as a result of something that none of us could have imagined. This could not be any better time here on the road to recovery, our economic recovery. So I think that I'll let the experts talk about this program, but it's really designed to help at so many different levels, in so many different ways. And I know it's going to make a big difference in our community. I'm very, very proud of the work that's been done. Thank you, Alyssa. I think I want to turn it over to Amy right now to talk, but we're very excited about this program, our Office of Economic Revitalization, and the good that we intend to do with the Business Connect.
So,
I don't
Patrick,
get to see yours part.
no, or Melly's part. Melly.
No, don't show my part.
Exactly, right? Like, no.
Sarah, would you entertain a motion to play the rest of the tape?
Absolutely.
Thank you guys for the entire clip.
Yeah, so we wanted to share that with you,
It's
and
good if Amy's not blushing.
really, but let's see if this one also connects. So this is another what we used at the soft launch. Also done by OER staff.
I think it's a fantastic one-stop shop for anybody looking for small business resources. All of us, there are so many resources here available, but if you don't know where to look, you're not going to be able to find them. If you can get to the Business Connector, you're going to have a menu of all the organizations that can assist you.
First one is, of course, access to capital or knowledge and trying to get that capital outside of just going to banks, finding other ways outside of the traditional methods. So that's one. Access to networking and finding other folks that have similar issues as you or are in a similar vein. Finally, just sorting through the information. So you can just search online and you'll be overwhelmed with a bunch of information that might not even be relevant to what you're doing. So having that thinned down, I found was the most important and kind of more specific to your companies.
Small businesses experience an overwhelming amount of information now, especially on the internet. Some could be true, some could be obsolete, some could be not even legit. And part of it is trying to decipher all that noise and trying to understand. For me, as a resident of Honolulu, like what is specific for me as living here and what is specific to my industry that I need to apply. Hawaii, we're big on collaboration. And so I think one of the greatest aspects that OBC offers is that all of this can be streamlined and all of these organizations on their directories can be at your tips, just waiting for you to like reach out to them. And you don't have to do this alone. As a Filipino American, we have the buying concierge, which means that it's a sense of communal unity where we lift each other's houses and help them move to a different neighborhood, rather than like hiring a tow company and all that. So we all help as a community to lift the house.
So super excited just to get that thing kicked off. It's been in the works. It's something you folks prioritized. There's been a bunch of,
The slide deck will be available and sent out by the program area. And when I talk about program area, I mean developmental services.
yeah, exactly.
So it's just around 10 o'clock.
Was
I
it?
think we should get started. So we can go through the material and then if there are questions.
Sorry,
please
guys.
put them in the chat.
This is Medicaid provider enrollment. Yeah, maybe AUW can update us. Anyway. Sorry about that. Back here to the fun. All right, so we just wanted to show you pictures because this is awesome that Alyssa, Melanie at the news conference, Hawaii News Now morning show, that is Siobhan and Alyssa, our team leaders on the Siobhan on the Ask the Mayor show on KHPH in the morning. Kim was there. How did she get out of the picture?
I took the picture. Alyssa.
There you go.
Alyssa was in there.
Yeah.
not Siobhan.
Oh, sorry, I didn't mean to say that. The Hub Dojo, we did some other outreach. And then just sharing Uncle Pocky, who's at Antique Alley in Kaka'ako. He's one of the first that has the Get Connected sticker on his business. So the bags that you have are a part of our outreach, and we're continuing just to do as much as we can to get the information out there, multiple languages, different stations. I guess what we really wanted to say is like, we'd love, your involvement in terms of the logo gear and stuff that you have, if you have a business or place that you can show and share the Oahu Business Connector, help small businesses to get the information they need, connection with resources, and just really focusing on promotion, awareness, and education right now. So that is that. Any questions about Oahu Business Connector before we move on? How's it been going since you launched?
It's been going well. One of our resource connectors had their first phone interaction today, and got an email that said, "Thank you so much. This has been really, really helpful." Several requests for personal connection plans. So the team has been putting those together, and then they follow up on a cadence of 2 to 4 weeks later to make sure that the businesses have actually followed up, or they encourage them to follow up if they haven't, which is what normally happens. And the human element, as we all know. And so they've seen quite a lot of traffic. I think what's really exciting is that as we start to get more data into this, we'll be able to see who's asking for what assistance in what specific area on the island. And that's what gets me super excited, because then we can build tools and resources to that need. So we can see that a woman business owner is looking for marketing and business assistance on the west side. Well, guess what? When we go out to the west side, those are the subjects we're going to talk about. What they really want to hear about. So that's what's super exciting. 6 months down the road, we'll have enough data to really be able to do that, so that we can plan next year's outreach. So,
and to be clear, the majority of the resources that are offered to businesses are those that are already out there in the community, like the chamber and others who provide, digital media training, how to start up a business at the Patsy T. Mink Center. I need a financial plan, right? Like where would you go? Small Business Development Center. I need a mentor. Go to the, why am I losing this? Score. So there's 70 partners already on this website. So we're excited to get it going.
I want to add on to that too, because we've also started to see what we were afraid of, and we know it's going to happen, was it for-profit businesses are like, hey, I want to be added. And we're like, this is nonprofit government right now. We want to be added to your calendar. And, you know, so we're having to come up with those rubrics of why and where and how and why not.
Right.
So to me, that's just as exciting because there's the demand.
Right. Welcome. Yep, there's a seat here for you. So.
Great job,
Thank you.
guys.
Yeah, that's great. A lot of hard work went into the launch and the site itself. So go check out the website if you haven't already. So the next thing is something that we're kind of just wanting to update you and then solicit potentially your support. It's budget season here. Sorry, this is not for you, AEW or Islander, as much as you'd love to, I'm sure. But
feel free to send it to me.
sure. So we've had our first round with the city council, and overall for the city, it's going to be a tight year because what's happening is this hazard pay arbitration. And so the unions are working, you know, it's a 4 votes to the governor and 1 vote for each of the counties for how they resolve this thing, but ultimately with it in arbitration, the mayor does not have his hands on the steering wheel. So it could be anywhere from a 10 to 20% salary coverage for those employees who were frontline employees. So HPD and the like, even though I know we worked the whole time through the pandemic, it depends on your union representation, whether it was in your contract that you get the hazard pay. So it could be up to $80 million that the city already has set aside, or it is up to $80 million that the city already has set aside. The arbitration could be, who knows, double that. So that's really scare for the city council members this year. So in light of that, we were asked to trim our budget or be, you know, conscientious. So our overall budget request is down 18.9% for salaries and 7.52% for operations. But the big shift is that we've had a lot of support from the beginning of the pandemic from the extra federal funds, the pandemic relief. So what we're asking is some of our operations and positions move into general funds. So we've requested a net total of 3 positions. That's 2 of our planners, 1 admin specialist, and a community liaison. And then 3 positions remain to move to general funds that were not included in the budget that are still live bodies doing work in our office today. That's the ag program manager, food equity and access specialist, and our economic data strategist. So our city budget funding of 1.3 million is actually supplemented with some extra funding, 650,000 in total that we've gone out to support our programs and our staffing. So we're new, but I just want to point out that our team is already doing everything they can to maximize our ability to run our programs and also to fund our staff. And that is not really traditional how city offices or departments are funded. It should be through general funds, but whatever it takes to do the job, we are, you know, going to go out there and be innovative to find it. So we have 2 new data interns, which is awesome, from the University of Hawaii. They're paid for by the Leap Start program, and they're helping us with all kind of the infrastructure and the backbone of our work so we can better understand it. I mentioned the Economic Development Administration Fellow for the next 2.5 years. And then additionally, we have a Po'okela Fellow. So they're kind of supported through the city and we pay a smaller portion of their salary. So there's some additional support that's provided for us to host another promising UH student to hopefully increase the pipeline to city employment. So adding that our grants contractor is going to help us. And then last year we executed about 45,000 in National League of Cities pilot projects, and we're set to receive a total of 316,000 for OER programs going forward. I think I put some of that in here, but basically the 310,000 that we're set to receive will cover 100,000 from the University of Hawaii for our broadband outreach. another 30,000 from the state for digital equity. So that's really trying to get to the parts of our community that have a hard time. Either everyone in the office shares this to go online, or they may not be able to afford internet. So the digital equity outreach is around that for the purposes of economic empowerment. Next, we are receiving 186,000 from DBET for their state small business credit initiative to provide technical assistance, again, to underserved communities. So we're looking forward to that. We haven't executed the MOA yet, but our next meeting for kicking that off, I believe, is like next week or something, right, Kate? And then we have another 16,000 that we've received as a professional development training that Denise is taking a part of, which is Lean Six Sigma. If you've ever heard of those trainings, they're working with Denise and our rental relief team, the Department of Community Services, and then Catholic Charities and CNHA on applying this type of professional development training, project management to the housing stabilization services of our rental relief program. So we're kind of looking at how to better get people to take advantage of that, but then also how to streamline the pathway from either our funded programs at Catholic Charities and CNHA or into some other Department of Community Services already existing programs. So we want to make sure that not only do people have access to housing stabilization, navigation, mediation, financial literacy, but that they can find the right door. And so that's kind of what Denise is working on with that funding. So we're grateful to receive that. It's, I don't know, Denise, can you add like a little certified at the end of your name after you complete it, maybe?
I believe so.
Anyway, so all this stuff is kind of how we're trying to share with the council that we're trying to do our part to supplement the budget. It's not that we're leaning on them for everything, but we do need that foundational support to be able to have the staff here to go after the grants, to write the grants, to search, right? To run the programs that we're running. We still have $28 million that we are executing today through 2026 in pandemic relief. So that's 2 food security programs, housing stabilization, COFA, death benefit for compact migrants, and I think that's it for the pandemic relief. We have a bunch of white papers in each of our program areas. So that will be, again, how we focus our work with the grants contractor. And then finally, just some exciting things that are starting to bubble up is I'm kind of happy and kind of not looking forward to it, but I'm going to be doing some training with the Oahu Metropolitan Planning Organization to learn how to do federal transportation grants so that we would have an economic development thinker as we're working on our larger public work projects, right? So those projects can take years to get through the federal process and to comply with all the EAs and everything else that they require. But if we can build that learning here to get through those federal highways and other public works projects with the thinking about transit-oriented development and economic development in the same space, we hope to have a more integrated approach with our fellow city department. So I'm looking forward to that. Kim and I have both been working with our Department of Land Management on different ideas, how to use city vacant retail spaces, how to use vacant city land for economic development. And the first project that's starting to get legs is with the University of Hawaii Research and Innovation Center. So they're looking at a little corner space in Chinatown on River Street, corner of River Street and Nimitz, to fix that up and put in an innovation center there that's related to the maritime industry. So really, the city is not much more than a host of the space, but if we can help to facilitate creative uses that might provide a pathway for our people to have jobs in industries that they have a ton of federal money in maritime. If you're not aware, there's over 2.5 billion coming into the shipyard that we want our local population to have the opportunity to work side by side with. So the shipyard isn't going anywhere. How can it also serve to benefit our people and not just the defense of the United States? That's a very early stages, and we're applying for an earmark with the university on that. And then finally, Patrick is getting creative with the Oahu Business Connector and talking to our Department of Planning and Permitting and HART, all of those businesses along the rail line, et cetera, to make sure that businesses that are in our planning and permitting pipeline also know that there's all these free or no cost or low cost services available to them. And the same for businesses impacted by rail construction, that they're aware that there's people and programs out there to help them. So that is it, a little longer than expected, but hope that was helpful, as quick of update as what we're doing as possible. Any questions?
That's pretty incredible, that space on River Street, because I was under the understanding that there was a lot of the buildings there were owned by the Malaysian government or an entity that wasn't interested in creating any economic opportunities on that street. So that's really awesome.
Yeah, and if any of you have ideas for those spaces, what Kim had been working on, as well as our food team, is activating the space with business incubation. Maybe there's a path with an incubator or accelerator program that they could be, you know, low or no cost placed in those spaces for 6 months or a year to really get their business launched if they need a physical location. Any other ideas? There's a few that are still, you know, percolating with the university, but there is literally vacant land. River Street is one of the most obvious areas because on top of all of that retail space is the city's affordable housing. So we own those spaces. We need to do some work to make sure that we can lease them below market rates or use them for economic development or higher purposes. But we're slowly inching our way to be an integrated city department in this space.
Any idea how much vacancy we have on River Street in our buildings? And I think it's a great thing because I work in that neighborhood and I do not walk down River Street. It's the only street I will not walk down.
Yeah, for good reason.
I was told not to. One day I started and I turned around and walked all the way back, right around the corner back to my office.
We're supposed to get the list. I think beyond the one that UH is looking at, and just to explain a little bit of the nuance, because they're government, we can do a government to government contract and not have to go out to the highest bidder the way that our rules are written right now. So Kat, the director at Department of Land Management, is working on that so that we, like Amy said, we can show a different kind of community benefit than just the straight taxpayer, the dollar to the tax rate or to our coffers. And so that's why we're excited about this, because we can demonstrate that, hey, this really can be done, and we can reactivate the area. The other two spaces, I want to say one was about 700 square feet and the other one was maybe 800-900 square feet. So they're not huge spaces, and that's why we thought this kind of incubator idea would be really interesting. You know, they go through some kind of program so that we know that they've got support around them, that they're not just going to be a fly by night. But you know, the idea is to then give them an opportunity to test the waters below fair market value and then grow into that, right? They're not going to be there forever. The idea is you eventually get kicked out, right? And you're able to make it on your own. So that's just kind of the ideas that we're throwing around there. But small spaces on River Street specifically.
Right, or even activating those spaces for pop-up events. There's some that aren't on River Street. We visited too. There's a whole row on
Mauna Kea.
So there's honestly a lot of space. Kim participated in a solicitation where
Chinatown Gateway on the second floor.
yeah, it's where Sandy Pole.
Downtown Arts Center.
Yeah, the Downtown Arts Center is a really lovely space, but they're losing money on that, so they're looking for other opportunities and no one bid on it. So we would love to bring some creativity, ingenuity, and opportunity, because I think, you know, everyone believes in the potential of Chinatown. Now, how do we put OER's shoulder to the wheel to activate that? One of my recent like ahas was the New Year's celebration that ASB also was a big part of, to open up that whole street. And I have never seen Chinatown shoulder to shoulder with people. Like, I couldn't even see any drug dealers or anyone. There were so many people.
People live there too.
Yes, yes.
Came out.
And it was wonderful. It was wonderful with all the food trucks and bouncy houses, such just a really great community feel and event. So
One of those tents was a buy local away vendor.
What are the demographics? I mean, so the intent is one, support the local demographics, and, you know, because I know there's a lot of condos on the outskirts, but we're off of River Street, it's more affordable housing. And what is the demographics? Are they working families or things like that? Because, you know, obviously healthcare is always going to be something that is a need, you know, that kind of helps in that type of thing. Is that a tenant that would be something in that way, so that they're not traveling and things like that, or if they're elderly or whatnot? Because that could be an interesting partnership in that way. And one of the things, you know, as we were talking and you guys are talking, is when I was traveling in Portugal earlier, and in Porto, there's this market for, I don't even know what it's called. It's like a permanent, like, so you know how our farmers markets, everybody's packing in and whatever, but it was like this permanent thing that, you know, people come in and open, but it's stable, and it's like, so I'm like, wow, you know, so people are coming in, farmers bringing in whatever, chocolatiers, like all different things, but it's permanent. So it's something that they can grow their business. They can have people come in. And so instead of always having people packing up, and I'm sure there was, you know, like, I'm sure there was out in the back offices is, you know, access to refrigeration, water, storage that pooled. And I think it's something that, you know, Melly had alluded to a couple of meetings ago or whatever, is to have these sort of, instead of pooled resources, instead of everybody having their own refrigeration or whatever. But I thought, you know, when we were there, it's in the heart of Porto, and it's in this old building downtown, and it's also a tourist attraction. So it's also something that people are coming in, but the locals are coming in and shopping, but something with permanency, so that people can actually build their business. And I don't know how all the stalls work. There was like the fresh seafood coming in straight on the side.
like Seattle's market,
Something like that,
DC's
exactly.
Eastern market, right? And I just visited a space in Chinatown that was apparently that old market. And for that space, you need a deep pocket developer. It's right there on Nimitz, but the inside is open 2 stories, and it's got stalls all around the outside. So I think there are possibilities. Where we need to start is like, what's the lowest cost option, right? And we're kind of looking into that as related to regenerative tourism. So the makers market, like Tony, you said, buy local, and could we bring that to Wahiwa? Could we bring that to Kaneohe? And how might the city support some of those that are for-profit and nonprofit ventures to really give businesses a launching pad? Yeah.
I really do like the idea you throw out, which is take any empty space the city has, and if it's set up, pre-qualify someone, and just let them operate there for like a year. And then at the end of the year, say, you made enough money. Now go sign a lease, right? Like, they'll either fail, or they'll be like, hey, now I got 50 grand. I can go.
But you also need people to drive people. It's sort of like, so you need a collective, like artist communities, like, so if there's a collective, you know, a bunch of artists, and they're.
I think we have a lot of space too.
Right, but you know, so you, like, what are we gonna do to drive them? And you know, the first Fridays and things like that many years ago, where they were quite successful, and then that's sort of that's what spurred Chinatown.
Right.
In that
I
time.
think what the city is missing is just the entity to take charge of and
To do it.
do that, yeah. And so honestly, yet, we don't necessarily have the capacity, and potentially pairing with MoCA and maybe managing director's office, we could start to pull this kind of stuff off. It just made me think of like, oh, you know, Sunset on the Beach and other,
Who did it before in Chinatown, when we, the first Fridays and all that? Did we know?
right? I don't know,
I don't think it was city, it was private.
yeah.
And we probably made a rule so that no one could privately do it.
Well, if you, I don't know if you've attended your business area neighborhood board, but there is a lot of concern from Chinatown residents, just like there are in Waikiki, that there's too many street festivals. A lot of those that go on in Chinatown are alcohol related, and so the residents are not big fans of that. But if we're talking about commerce and like what I saw at the New Year's Festival, that is like Keiki friendly, right? It's family friendly. The streets were packed. And then it also gives businesses an opportunity to connect with customers and do it in a cheap way in terms of the startup cost. So we're looking at all those things. You know, you're looking at the two people who would do it right now. But
Debbie also has a point, because although we were part of that, and every vendor had to set up their own tent, their own like
yeah,
generator, like whatever you need.
well, that would be
Like,
kind of level
you
two,
take the
right?
square,
Just-
it's like,
Yeah.
and I was floored that at 9 o'clock they were all there and set up.
Yep.
This was like herding 50 cats.
And we have had discussions with Department of Transportation because, you know, rerouting buses is not really an easy thing. Department of Parks actually runs 4th Street, you know, all there, it's under their purview. And so having discussions with them and maybe having to change some of their rules, right? Because you can't have for-profit, again, on city property. And so there are those discussions for sure. So we will come back to you as they start to
Yeah.
flourish a little bit more.
Well, we do have some guests here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you, Amy. I did want to also just emphasize that it would be really great if commissioners could help my testimony with budget.
April 1st.
Yeah, I watched the hearing and Amy did a fantastic job, but it was not easy. So would definitely encourage everybody to support.
Thanks, Eliza. We'll send out an email as a reminder, so if you have the bandwidth, whether to submit written or appear online, they do allow testimony, so, thank you.
Yeah. Definitely. Okay, our next item is item number 2. We haven't seen you guys in a while.
Oh, sorry, Amy, do you guys send that to us when you guys get that notice?
Yep.
Okay, sorry, I
We'll
must,
post it next Monday.
you'll post it.
The council will post it next Monday.
And then we'll send it to the church.
Yeah.
And you'll send it to us?
Yes.
We can submit. Okay, thank you.
We'll get the presentation up, but people should have it in your packets as Kate figures out what she's doing. Yeah, it's all right.
You want me to go over that?
Sure, yeah.
Thank you, everybody. Thanks for.
Maybe if Millie and yeah, could see you too, since the camera's right there, Andrew.
Since the camera's up here, they don't really need to see. Actually, I think they can only see this. If this is
Yeah,
shared.
for sure.
Yeah.
It's not being shared yet. Are we on WebEx?
This is super fun watching you do this.
I know. Is that how I get it full screen?
Yeah.
Can't read it. Anybody? That it didn't, no. Try that. Okay. How about display settings? There we go. No, do display settings.
Oh, where is that?
From beginning.
Oh.
Anyway,
Yeah. Get
I'm
started.
just gonna go. I'm like, there you go. Thank you. Welcome again. So I haven't seen you all in a while. I'm Andrew. It's Kaiko Pupiko. We did this work also with a colleague, Lori, I think some of you met, who is on paid family leave because she has a good job, what she has. And what I want to talk to you about is some work that we did. Yes. Yeah. Okay. This is a very busy screen. This is a project that we were asked to do with the Hawaii Workforce Funders Collaborative. I don't know if you've all heard of that. Includes like Weinberg, Hawaii Community Foundation, I think, Community Schools, Stubbs, Castle. Anyway, it's a bunch of private funders that got together to create this funding collaborative. And what they wanted us to do is look at groups, particularly who are the focus of workforce development type of efforts, such as low-income folks, to Pacific Islanders, young people like high school kids, people coming out of prison, people coming out of addiction, things like that. So we wanted to talk to folks and kind of meet them where they're at. So we went to their communities, it was statewide, so we went to different islands. To kind of ask them what is a good job, like what does that even mean? Because all of these workforce things are supposed to help people get into good jobs, and it was to ask that question. So we usually start out, in a circle, whatever. Right? First question was usually, what do you want to be when you were a kid? Like what happened to your dreams, or how did that go? And then we talked a lot about, kind of like, tell me what was your, what was the best job you ever had? Yeah, what was the worst job you ever had? And why? Just really talking story and trying to get an idea of what people thought about jobs and about their sense of success. So that's what we did. So I'm gonna I hate to give credit where it's due, but this is kind of Greg Kim's fault. I especially hate to give Greg Kim credit, this guy, because he's,
His fault.
we go way back. But what he made us think about was sort of how do we think of jobs in the first place? And there's really this contest paradigm that, jobs are based on your merit. You work hard, or you have skills or whatever, and then you're in this contest against other people, and whoever wins gets better jobs, better pay, more material wealth, more status, whatever, whatever the contest. And so there is a jobs framework that I think you guys have seen before.
You
It's
shared
not
it with
written.
us and now he doesn't
Yeah,
like
yeah.
it
I
anymore.
mean,
Changed his mind.
well, this is actually something that the Workforce Collaborative showed us, is this idea of this framework of what is a good job. So the idea was go test this framework against these people we're talking to across Hawaii. Okay, so their framework is really about economic stability. Okay, that a good job has these three aspects: economic stability, which I would call the rewards of the contest. The contest rewards you with economic sort of well-being. Economic mobility, which is the ability to keep advancing in a job. Just kind of the vitality of the contest, like churns you through, better and better opportunity. And then equity, respect, and voice, which is like the fairness of the contest. It's fair. Okay. So this is what Greg made us discuss. I don't know if you remember this, but in one of the meetings we had, Greg was talking about, he said something like, if you really wanted to make as much money as possible, you really wouldn't be in Hawaii. Right? He said, like, if you're software or something like this, yeah, you wouldn't be in Hawaii if the goal was to make as much money. So we thought about that for a bit. And that this idea of work as a contest, it doesn't quite work. And it certainly didn't reflect what people told us. Okay. So one is like, a couple of things are just like critiques of like the meritocracy. So, you know, doesn't quite work as average. In others, the rewards you get, it's not necessarily matched to the social value you create. So people like teachers and things like that, they're not the highest rewarded people in society. And then not only that, but work isn't always distributed by merit. Sometimes it's distributed based on like your upbringing or privilege or luck or different things like that. It's not always goes to whoever worked the hardest or deserved it the most. And then there's this idea of sort of winners and losers. So this meritocracy creates this idea that if you don't have a great job or whatever, you're somehow like less than or a loser. These kinds of sentiments come up a lot actually if you talk to people who are looking for jobs or they can't find jobs or whatever, that they're somehow like less than. And then the flip side too, some like you see the other side, like people who are on top of the world often get the false sense that somehow they completely deserved it, and sometimes they don't. So there's some negative social consequences of the meritocracy. But the other piece is that it kind of leads to that policy, and that's this idea that Hawaii is not competitive in some places, But if we think of work as a contest, we can inadvertently drive people out of Hawaii by telling them go pursue your opportunities or whatever. Those things are going to be outside of Hawaii. And finally, from our conversations with people, just plain lots of people aren't playing. They don't want to, they're not in it for trying to advance whatever. Right? They're just trying to make ends meet. So rather than a contest, it feels more like a quest. Like at the baseline level, people just want to survive, right? Just trying to survive. But then once you survive, then the search really is for meaning. And that's kind of what we want to go into. So the
It'll work eventually.
oh yeah, exactly. So the framework we came up with is also complex, convenient. Okay, but a good job based on this conversation was number one, to get home in Hawaii. Okay, in order to have enough to survive and thrive, while you can eat the place-based. It's not just about where can I make the most money, because again, for those people playing that game, that's somewhere else for a lot of them, right? So really the idea is, how do I make ends meet here at my home, in my home? The second piece is to make a contribution, whether that's to your family or to your community or to Hawaii at large. This idea of I want to make a contribution. And then a lot of the stories talked about people's good health, which means not just their physical health, their mental health, their self-concept, their relationships with others, sort of a holistic view that this job, I'm healthy in this job. Okay, so for example, people would say that a particular job that they had was a terrible job because they felt like they were just a cog in the machine. They felt like they weren't valued or anything like that. So they couldn't wait to quit that job. And they wanted to find a good job. Okay. Okay. So I'm gonna go through each one and I'm just gonna share a little bit of some of the things that we heard. Okay. So number one is to be at home in Hawaii. It's really about two pieces. One is having boots in the ground so that I can, it's actually about stability, not mobility. Can I stay in one place? Can I have my family here? Can my kids go to school here? Can I raise another generation of people here? I mean, a lot of people, that's kind of what they value most, more than how much money they have or how big their house is, how many cars they have or anything. Can I be at home? And then it's a matter of making. So we had a couple of stories we wanted to share.
Yeah, one thing I want to share before I talk about, Andrew mentioned that we went around the sort of the state, just talked to different groups of people. Different islands, some on Zoom, or it's Gen Z folks, we done on Zoom. But the conversations were pretty deep, and the thing that I want to share before getting to the quotes is that people just appreciated encouragement. that people would actually come out and just actually really listen to what they have to say, that felt important to them. I think in all of this work that we've done, that's been the biggest thing. This person, I think well, we heard this a lot, actually. This wasn't, this we heard on different islands, this idea of people, like as Andrew said, people have to move where to be successful. And what folks felt here was that staying here is the most important part. This idea to connection and land and culture happened throughout everywhere we went. Actually, we kind of heard that pretty strongly. And then the second quote, this one, I really think this was on Kauai. We were at Waimea High School, Kauai, talking to a bunch of high school students, and it was quite a conversation. I mean, these kids were. They felt it. They understood what we were talking about. And this one girl in particular, she said this. She said, "I see my dad working 2 jobs. When he comes home, he never eat, never shower yet, and he looks exhausted. He looks just rough. He's not doing it for his happiness. He's doing it to support himself and his kids." And she, I believe this girl, I think her dad did several jobs, right? He had a couple of jobs, one of which she was looking at, and it was like he was a mechanic. And she was learning to be a mechanic. She was like, "I'm probably going to be a mechanic." We're like, "Is that what you want to do?" So, not really, but I'm looking at my dad, and then I got to support this. So, yeah, I'll set it up. But just, yeah. It was a good conversation.
Yeah, the idea is just that basic idea to do whatever it takes to make it. I think what it's sometimes get reduced in policies to like wages, which of course is part of it. Wages is part of it. But people working multiple jobs, things like that, they're paying for it in other ways too. They're gonna have time with their family. So there's all these calculations that people are making to trade off between how much do I make and how much does it cost. So one trade off. The second piece is to make a contribution. The core one, of course, is how to contribute to my family. Kids, all that stuff, like stable and safe. But what came up a lot was people wanting to make a contribution to so.
Yeah, this conversation we had on Maui, we had a couple of meetings on Maui. This one, I believe, was with a group of moms. They have to be working moms, and while this person talked about the hotel sort of industry, I think the thing that kind of stuck on this might be veering from where Andrew's going. The thing that stuck out to me about this conversation was this idea. We haven't heard it from any of the fathers that we interviewed, but moms were like, I need to like figure out my job and how it works with my kids. Because I gotta think of my kids. I gotta think about their schedules and summers, and we never heard that from any of the men. I know it's not a surprise to this.
It's a difference of brain and gender.
Yeah, I mean, we sat there like, oh yeah, that's right. And all of them were thinking about that. No, I can't just take any job. And I think this idea of having this work in the hotel was tough for that one. I can't really get to my kids either way. And then this one, this we heard quite a bit on all the islands and every conversation we had. There was this idea about
So the last piece is about good health. And 2 pieces of that came to the most. One is a healthy sense of myself. So it's self confidence. And the other piece is others.
We visited a group on Maui and Puna, a group called Men of Pa. These are men that were transitioning from jail to home, and the program is trying to help them get jobs, get recentered into culture. And this guy was just this big strapping guy, and he was like, I have an opportunity to go back and work in construction where I was working and make really good money. I can provide for my family the way I need to provide. He said, but I know that takes me right into the life that I had before. So I'm getting offers to do the same thing, but I can't because I have to think about my kids. And if I can't be the best man, the best father, brother that I can be, then it's forgotten. So I think that was really, I think we had Matt Stevens with us from who's the ED of this organization. It was pretty powerful conversation. And then Sam, I think this might have been a key project. We had a conversation there on the winter side. My best job I felt seen and heard and flourished when I was doing, and I enjoyed. My boss recognized my effort, and the leadership provided me the chance to grow. This really is about respect, having that respect coming in, which is something also we heard from the Micronesian community when we talked to them. We want to feel respected in the work that we do.
So, just real quick, couple implications that we can discuss. So in terms of, so if we have a better idea, a lot of these things are trying to get people into good jobs. So we felt that we have a better idea of what a good job actually is from the standpoint of people seeking the jobs. What are they actually looking for? It might have some implications on our policy, what we invest in. So the first is this idea of helping people make ends meet. So it is about living wages, yes. But it's also about safety net when people fall out of jobs, about the affordability of stuff. So it's not just, again, on the income side, it's trying to figure out this balance and those major expenses of housing, childcare, transportation, healthcare, all the really expensive things that is making it hard to make ends meet are part of that. Asset building, especially for low-income folks, opportunities to save and build assets, and then acknowledging the function of social capital in the economy. That it's not a bad thing necessarily, that people rely on their connections, their families and stuff to make ends meet. It's actually a positive feature that allows people to stay in Hawaii. Creating new and good jobs, it really points to this idea again. Like I remember somebody in Molokai told me, it's a good job on Molokai. It's a job that's actually in Molokai, because a lot of the jobs we're getting pushed to are like Oahu. So I want to work where I live. This is where I am. So the idea of community-based economic development or building jobs at the places where people are, of course, local small business and local entrepreneurs. Those are things that we are already prioritizes, but that's to us kind of what this points towards investing. Addressing a good work penalty is the idea that for some of the most valued jobs, there's like a market failure, right? Some of the most valued jobs in our society, they're not paid very well. And like during the pandemic, saw the essential workers and also lifted them up or whatever. But we talked to a lot of essential workers who really don't have a living wage, so they really can't sort of function. So.
And as soon as the pandemic was over, right?
Yeah, who are those people? Yeah, exactly. So, and nonprofit work, same thing. There's kind of a penalty for working in nonprofits, even though you're generating social value. So it's trying to address that. Good job environment. So this is where employers come in, I think, creating purposeful work, a healthy workplace, respect and belonging, shared power, like all those things would get a positive reaction from workers in terms of wanting to stay in those jobs and people able to those job environments. Addressing unequal opportunities, so acknowledging sort of shortcomings and sort of where those places of inequity exist, and then making equitable investments. And then finally, in education and workforce development, we did a prior project with Good Jobs Challenge, I think, and New Age. But it was really looking at who gets to see that. So these folks who are looking for jobs, like, do they get to help design these workforce development programs and things to make sure that they are effective? Do they have a seat at the table? Are these pipelines feasible? One of the issues, for example, is like in the health industry, the end product might be good jobs, but the initial stages might be jobs that are not feasible for people to actually hold, like a CNA, like a certified nurse assistant pays, I think, under 30,000 or something, just about 30,000 a year. So it's a pathway, yes, but it's not a feasible pathway that anybody would go on. If you ask people, actually, we did. We asked people, like, would you take this job to get that job? And they would just say, I can't. So we got to create feasible pipelines. Invariant investments, meaning, a lot of the investment right now is actually in the training and the placement piece. And I think a lot more of that could go to the sort of the outreach and the preparing people for work piece. And then the roles of schools, and this, said the schools. People. So that's it. Questions or comments?
Yeah, sort of just, as we look through this and as, a small business owner and having gone through, like, having no employees to a lot, and, part of it, there's an element, of course, wages, and that's important. But I feel like there needs to be, as we all talk about this and you're saying, okay, how can people survive? The businesses aren't the only answer to this, because they max out depending on your business. You're not going to have baristas making $100,000, and the business being able to survive, and what does that look like, right? So part of it is sort of like, okay, in the means, and I brought this up before, what can the government, like, do we have to tax food, or whatever, the GET tax, like people don't realize how much it compounds on the cost of everything, to do business and everything. You're taxed on every level. Like when you see our lease rent bill, oh, and then there's it's 4%, and then your lease rent, and then your separate electricity, even though you have 3 HECO bills already. I mean, it's just insane what businesses have to go to, and small businesses. So as we're talking about entrepreneurship and getting people involved, there's that other part. The fun part is creating and everything, and then here's the reality. Okay, get the lease space. How are you gonna pay for all of your camp fees? Oh, your camp fees, oh, it was under budgeted, so now we're gonna retroactive that and we're gonna collect it next year. I mean, it's not as simple as just wages. And another thought is also mindset. Like in our business, I think being younger and having started with literally nothing, to appreciating knowing that people are going to age out, they can't work for us forever, and with the mindset of we are a training ground to hopefully them, what are they going to become? And our original employees have PhDs, have their own businesses. We're super stoked on the outcome of the training ground. So while small businesses, if you look at that, it can be a training ground, but as minimum wage keeps going up, you're going, okay, how can I get more high school students? When now we're, because nothing else it's going up, but there's nothing else helping the businesses or whatnot on the other end, right? Everything moves up together, so it's paralleled. So, thoughts on that. While all of this is really good, also what kind of role can the state support? Because ideally, it is nice for everybody to stay here and whatever. And so if some things were taken care of that allows for, because not all jobs are equal. That's it.
Mhm.
Like we can say what is a good job, but not all jobs are going to be equal.
Right, not all people with the same jobs.
Exactly.
So I think.
Did you identify any jobs that meet all the criteria? Because I'm thinking, I've never had a job where I could pick up the kids, but I had a job that I could provide for my kids. So it's a trade.
Yeah, I don't think we have a prescription for like what each person should want, but I do think that's.
But I'm suggesting there's no job that does everything. Maybe there is.
As in life.
I gotta agree, John. But what I was gonna say was a couple of things. So one, on 2 levels. So one is, as a small business owner, that is, at least for a lot of people, they want more opportunities to do that.
Yes.
The entrepreneurism. And so like for a lot of these workforce development things, right, it puts you in a trap, tech, energy, or whatever. And one of the things that we heard a lot from communities, right? We want entrepreneurs, and I want to learn how to start a business, which is part of asset building,
Right.
To potential, right?
Right.
And even if you fail, you earn valuable experience.
Right.
And whatnot. So opportunities for people to be able to start businesses, there's a huge public policy function in that, right? Regulation and the ability to get capital, all that stuff, right? There's a lot of opportunity to get a more vibrant small business and entrepreneurial culture, right? In terms of employees, it is tough. So I think one of the things we saw is that for some folks, they will sacrifice some pay for flexibility, right?
Oh, sorry, I can't really hear on our side. It's
Oh,
muffled.
sorry about that. Yeah, so there's some opportunities to switch, like, or people will make their own trade-offs. They'll figure it out. So I'm willing to take maybe less pay, but I have more flexibility so I can pick up my kids and I don't have to. Or this other woman said, like, I'm gonna work closer to home, again, for the sake of her family, and I'm gonna trade off either some mobility possibilities or some pay. So I think it's recognizing that, and some people are attracted not merely by the pay.
Oh, without a doubt. But at the same time too, there's a breaking point for people. I mean, psychologically, you talk about mental health and everything like that, and you know why people have to leave, and you know, and also culture, right? There are environments where culturally that, you know, like how do you change a mindset where this is how this people runs their business? People don't get to say, you know, this is how you do it, and so you know, some people might just feel stuck. You know, am I qualified to move laterally and whatnot? And but I think an overall thought too, and you know, and in regards to Molokai, the hard thing about Molokai is, you know, when there's a sign that literally says go home when you arrive at the airport, how does, like, is that mindset permeated? So you have this one person that just like, God, I love to work at home and whatever, when you don't have an environment that is even allowing potential for growth and businesses on that island to grow, right?
Right, that comment actually came from from UH on trying to create jobs on Molokai.
Which is yeah, definitely. But anyway, in general, I mean, but how, again, so what is, all of these are great and I completely agree, and wouldn't it be nice to have our kids come here and stay and live and be able to thrive? But again, what is the state or what can the government do to support everyone? Like not
So that's what we're trying to get to here. I mean, that's why you're on the Economic Revitalization Mission. So I want to frame it, we are not the state.
I
We
understand.
are the city.
I
We're not
understand.
trying to figure out Molokai. So first of all, shrink your universe.
Yeah.
Number one. Number two, this is the first time in my lifetime, when you think about workforce development, that you actually have an opportunity to think about it from the worker's perspective and not from the government's perspective. What do we think? Where should people be going? So it's trying to shift the paradigm,
Right.
to help us think about this a little bit different. Think about it from the perspective of someone that you're trying to hire, knowing that they have to make those balancing trade-offs, right?
Right.
When I started working here, we moved from Washington, DC. My husband stayed at home because I couldn't do my job and pay for childcare for two
Right.
toddlers.
Right.
So he started going back to school, then he started working part-time, then he worked at a farmer's market. Like everybody, all of us around this table are doing that. I know it because you've told me what you have to do to just be on this commission.
Right.
To contribute. So I think when we look at these implications, we have to think about it in terms of what does the city do? What could this new office do to impact some of these things? And there's some areas here that we're trying to work, and we can't do all of them. But as you go out into your lives and have impact in banking and nonprofits and small business and supporting small businesses, what does this imply for that work? Is there anything that you can take with you that, I mean, I think about some of the work we do and think, am I offering someone a good job in OER? Is this pay really good for, you know, one of my employees that's just about to have a baby, as a wife? Like, I don't know if it's enough. Right? And ultimately, he's going to have to make that decision, and we're going to have to make decisions about all these different things. But the idea of talking about workforce today was to hear about this whole area from a little bit different perspective than an economic development organization or an economic revitalization commission might hear this. Usually it might be Amazon coming in and telling us who they need in their workforce. And then what are you guys gonna do to make sure that we get those people so we can ship our stuff around Hawaii or whatever it is. And it's not that that perspective isn't valid, and we'd like to hear that too. But when we had our permitted interaction group, I think there was some interest in this study and the way it was conducted that might expand our thinking a little bit.
I think this is very valuable, in the sense that, like you said, this is thinking at, it's bringing a perspective that hasn't been really looked into enough in the past. And I think if there's a way for us to pair the two analyses kind of together, where on one side you're coming from the perspective of the workforce, and then you're saying these are the types of jobs that we as workers want, and you can come from a more government strategic kind of economic development perspective, and you can figure out where the overlap is. And because the city is limited on resources, maybe those are your top priorities, right?
I think the way I would put it is that, and talk to people, people make pretty rational choices. So the difference is that there's more vectors,
right,
than just pay, mobility. There's more variables in a person's calculation. But if we don't consider those, then we're bound to make policy that might actually be leading people out or away from sort of the choices they want to make. But for the most part, when we talk to folks, I mean, they make pretty rational choices. They have bad options a lot of the time, right?
I like this as well, and I think just a common framework, even if all we did was have a framework and understanding between the workforce and business and government. Because I would say our workforce categorically is unhappy, and our business community is probably unhappy with their workforce. It's probably not as bad as we think. I think when I look through this, I would tell any of my friends, if you get 2 or 3 of these, you should probably be pretty stoked about because you're not. I just don't think getting 6 out of 6 or whatever is likely. But if you support your family and you get to do like if you get 2 or 3 boxes checked, you should probably smile instead of like feeling like I didn't get 3. She's like I got 3.
So
But right now I don't think we have a common understanding. So
I know I gotta keep moving.
That's
We have
fine.
a lot more on the agenda. But I wanted to just mention to you too that for one of the first times that I've seen in my career here at Hawaii is doing lobbying and things like that. A lot of organizations like the Chamber and Hawaii Employers Council and all these different organizations are actually focused on things besides how like direct economic development issues, and we're thinking about quality of life for the employees, the cost of living and childcare and all those things with the legislative session this year. So I think you're right, and I think that people are starting to include all of those things instead of just how does it impact it. Anyway, next presentation.
I'm just gonna first present from here. Suzanne Scholl, the Chief Operating Officer with Warner Bay. Taylor's the VP, so take on to the second half. First, thank you guys for inviting us to this presentation. We're very excited to get to meet with you and just good to hear the updates of what you're all working on. We're here to present information, but also very excited to have the chance to see how we can work together more closely in the future. We'll be talking about our ALICE reports and our ALICE initiative today. I'm assuming everyone knows ALICE is asset limited, income constrained, and employed. And it's a shorthand way for us to talk about the population that is above the federal poverty level, but does not have a survival budget each month. So what they're spending each month is more than what they're bringing in. They're struggling middle class, working class, however you want to frame them. And we have also used the ALICE framework here in Hawaii to really kind of reframe our approaches as someone who meets a lot of people around the nonprofit sector, around like systems change, making sure that we're not talking about this individual and shortcomings and addressing an individual's problem. ALICE is a way for us to say there's a huge amount of people who are struggling because of the systemic conditions they're finding themselves in. So we'll kind of go through a little bit of the data. I'm going to skip a little bit or behind the time, so I'll jump around and share where these reports are, and we're always happy to talk in more detail around the data pieces. But I did want to take a moment to correct this, because this is something that has come up in every presentation we've made in the last year. We have 2 reports that are out with ALICE data. The One on the left, the Allison Cross Currents, was released in 2023, but it is using 2021 data. These are the Alice reports that are done by over 30 states nationally. They're based on US Census data, and they're done in partnership with United Way of Northern New Jersey. Because in 2020, the census data was so poor and we had gone through COVID, we and Hawaii felt like we really needed some updated data and something for Hawaii locally. So Alice in Hawaii 2022 facts and figures was published in 2022 with current 2022 data. And it was locally collected in partnership with Anthology, statistically representative down to county level. So I just want to kind of throw that out there. So when you hear Alice reports, there's two slightly different figures. I have worked more with the facts and figures because I feel like having the local data and the way that it was segregated is really beneficial. But you'll see that the findings come out fairly similar. The rate of Alice is between 41 and 44%. You kind of see this trajectory. When we do our future data, we're expected to see that number kind of continue on a path. Poverty, regardless of which study you're looking at,
So continue on a path which way?
Alice will continue to increase. The poverty level is really one of the main pieces that we are seeing from each report. It went from 9% to 12% to 15%. And so even if the total number of families under Alice is not dramatically increasing, the number of people under that line of poverty is. Go to the next slides. These are some of the key findings that came from the local Hawaii report. And we just talked about the first one with the poverty line. You can see the jump in 4 years of 9% to 15%, and that was borne out by the census data as well. The other piece that came out of this report was how the impacts of COVID, what we saw from pre-COVID through post-COVID, is that everyone was impacted deeply in COVID in 2021-22, but families under the Alice threshold had not rebounded. So they were still dealing with much higher levels of mental health crises. We're still paying off debts. We had a lot more concerns around housing, whereas people above the Alice threshold may have gone into savings, but their lives were basically back to a place where those were not as common. Sort of like ongoing crises for them. Go to the next slide. So this is kind of what I was talking about with the trend lines. As you can see with the 2020 Alice report, there's the one that's blocked out in red. But as you see in the increase for poverty is really increasing. So even, and we see the number for Alice going, if you look at the bottom of the gray, it's at 44%. So the numbers of Alice is slowly increasing, but we are seeing that poverty that we talked about earlier. What we also saw in this report, which would be no surprise to anyone, is that your chances of being an Alice household are not randomly distributed. There are deep and structural disparities in the data, and that goes across the census data and our locally reported data. Ethnic and racial disparities show up very hugely. In this report, we see that 60% of Hawaiian families are living below the Alice threshold. We have a separate children in focus report that shows that 75% of all Hawaiian children in the state are living under the Alice threshold, which I know is something you talked about with your chair in the past. And so if you go to the next slide, please. And so basically what we see is that there's targeted groups of families, households that are struggling to stay above the Alice threshold, and in some cases even to stay out of poverty. We know that aside from Hawaiian families, people who have children are much more likely to be in Alice. Children are expensive, and if you're on that line, it is pulling you down in a way that you cannot simply afford your monthly expenses. And we're seeing this even more dramatically during COVID with the cost of housing and the lack of childcare. We actually expect that this is going to be an even larger finding in our next report. When people live in larger households, often reflected by more children, they're much more likely to live under the Alice threshold. And of course, to no surprise, renters are also much more likely to be under the Alice threshold. And I want to point that out, especially from in our Children in Focus report, which is on our website and related to this data. One of the findings that really stood out to me in that report is that families with children who have to move every year or more frequently, if you're in your house for less than a year, you're much more likely to be in Alice. And our housing crisis is requiring many people who are renters to move much more frequently. In addition to hurting income, like moving is actually expensive, you need a down payment, you need new curtains, whatever things you need to hang up, you're taking your discretionary money and putting it back into that new house. But we are also seeing that children who have to move a lot also have worse long-term outcomes. Their schooling suffers, their social group suffers, self-esteem can suffer. So if families are moving involuntarily, we're setting ourselves up for an additional 10, 20 years of this kind of instability. So I want to point that out. This data is reflecting that, but so does the children.
Have to have insufficient income. I would assume that would be 100% of people below the Alice threshold. Is that?
So this is yes. So under the threshold, one of the findings that came out from the data, there was a huge correlation and a sort of informal line. We don't do Alice by dollar amounts, like a 1 cent amount, but 84% of all of the families in Alice are under $75,000. And so the reason we pulled this out is because that aligns to $18 an hour for 2 working adults, which was the new minimum wage that had been approved last year. So
16% make more than 75 grand a year.
16%.
Is that how we read that?
No, sorry.
That's what I'm
Yeah.
hearing.
Give me 1 second.
Because I'm kind of with you.
They're
By
still
definition,
Alice,
yeah.
but they're making more than $75,000 a year.
Exactly. So 16% of families who make more than $75,000 a year are also Alice. And 84% of people under.
Mathematically, you could make 100 grand a year before you have enough kids and enough
Exactly.
trauma in your life.
Yeah, and so the Alice, the percentage, there's a lot of factors that go into it. As a simple way, we're really looking at what the minimum wage increase would do. And if you're $18 an hour or above, then your chances of being Alice are much out of Alice are much higher. And if you are below $18 an hour, you're basically 84% chance that you'll be in the Alice threshold. And I will revise that slide to be worth it.
I was just making sure we understood.
Yeah,
correctly.
no, it's a good one. Even when you flipped it for me, it's like, oh geez. I know this is of a lot of interest, and I'll touch a little bit on like what's coming next. But this is our this is what the Alice household survival budget is based on. These are the numbers from 2021. We'll have updated figures in June for 2022-23, and see the corner. There's a bar over it. But basically, for the state for a family of 4, it comes out to $42.91 for 2 incomes, so just over $21.50 an hour. Oahu is actually a little bit lower. Maui is the highest island, but even still, we're looking at basically close to $20 an hour per person for 2 working adults just to have a survival budget in Oahu. And so when you're talking about good paying jobs and what we're looking at, 18 is the way threshold. 20 is probably what we're looking at, and anything under those 2 numbers, really, we're saying that someone's not going to survive here. So no matter how much training or effort they're putting into their work, they're going to be falling in the wrong direction financially. Then we can skip this slide. And then last, just want to put a few things with the carbon expenses in crisis. What we saw in the data, and of course, just anecdotally, as we worked in the rent relief programs and utility programs, was that families had fallen into debt. Even those who had some savings had used it very quickly. Nearly 1 in 4 families in the Ellis report don't have enough money to cover 4 weeks of expenses, and almost half don't have enough. 47% don't have enough for 8 weeks. And so one of the ways that we had brought, when AEW brought Alice to Hawaii back in 2016, the sort of tagline was, Alice families are 1 crisis away from falling into economic crisis. And that was COVID. We saw it quickly, instantly. It was, 4 weeks in, people were unable to pay their rent. That situation continues. People are out of COVID, but the savings is gone. If they had any, they took on additional debt. And for us, seeing the prices of housing going up, rentals going up 40–50% over a couple of years, the number of people who don't know where they're going to be living next year, who are not able to stretch their dollars to make food for the entire month, this is exacerbating every piece. And I know I'm singing to the choir here, but the data is showing the picture is extremely dire, and the families are really on the edge. And I think it's also bearing out to see how many people are choosing to leave Hawaii.
And if you get to this later, that's fine, but I'm troubled by, I remember seeing the first report in 2016, and I think it was shocked our society. So you have this realization how many people are poor and struggling. And all this energy goes in, minimum wage like doubles, all this effort, and you're telling me it's like worse than it was in 2016.
Yeah.
Is there any I feel kind of like we did all this effort and it's worse. That doesn't feel good. Is there like a epiphany you're gonna?
Yeah, actually, what with the effort,
I'm
not feeling good about
yeah,
myself.
but with the effort that was done, like what was successful? With like to what Tony's point was in 2016 with the quote unquote efforts, like what were there any initiatives that were successful?
So I guess from a long-term frame of work, I'd say that one of the benefits of Alice Initiative is that we're talking about this as a systems issue. I feel like in 2016 we're saying, oh, that poor person can't pay their rent. What are they doing wrong? Or here's a check. But it was them that was the issue. And that is basically left all conversations around, I mean, to some extent government policy, but certainly nonprofit discussions. And having worked in the nonprofit sector for over 20 years, and that poor person narrative being taken away, I think is an enormous success so that we can start to focus on root causes and what is going to fix. But I also want to be realistic, as much as we can do around Alice, as AUW, as our partners do, you know, we are a drop in the bucket compared to a crisis like COVID. We're a drop in the bucket compared to a 40% increase in rental costs. Like, those are the factors that are shaping this discussion. And we are being part of this discussion. We have shifted a lot to like advocacy and collective impact work and bringing together our partners around like examining those root causes and how to do work differently. That's very long-term work. Kayla will talk more about that as well. But yeah, is there one magic solution to this? There isn't. If there was, we would just have talked about that from the start. I do want to, before I pass it to Kayla, just spend about 2 minutes to share a few things that are coming up that I hope will be exciting and potential work that we might be able to connect on. The United Way of Northern New Jersey, which is the group that runs United for Alice and do the census data, have done some really great work on putting together some additional tools. And I wanted to highlight this one. They just released this in February. It is the Economic Viability Dashboard. And there is a ton of data on here. You can disaggregate by little county areas, by PUMAs, which are little micro areas. I don't remember what PUMA stands for, public use micro data. You can look at work, you can look at housing, you can look at community things. So a lot of the pieces that were going into the Good Place to Work, you can look at how our community is faring on a whole lot of different variables. Like it's about 50 variables in there. So really wonderful new resource to break up the census data to specific issues that even communities that you're trying to navigate down. They also are launching a program called Alice at Work that AUW is going to be looking more closely into. And this is something that's trying to bring together employers into that kind of question. Recognizing employers have limited budgets, want to do best for their employees. What are the different variables that they can shift or improve on? Kind of based on what the Alice reports say and potentially looking at what the Good Place to Work says as well. So that's something that'll be coming up in the near future. There'll also be several other reports. As I mentioned, we'll have the household survival budget updated numbers in 2024. The short answer is they will go up. There'll be an additional report in the fall here with local 2024 data, again done with anthology, and an updated focus on children report for in the end of 2024, between October and December, the way it will be released. And so we'll be sure to share all those with this committee as well. Let's do my last slide, and I'll kind of skip the detail of it. But one thing I did want to touch on, that little gray box down there is the federal poverty line, and that's the line where people qualify for most benefits like SNAP, EITC, child tax credits. That blue box is Alice, and there's a huge push nationally to consider when programs are being adopted that Alice is used as the standard for eligibility as opposed to the federal poverty line. Anything in between those gaps would be a win, but the reality is that we're leaving out a huge amount of people who are struggling, but we're providing benefits just to those who are under FPL. And so that's will be part of our work as well, and that's something that we very much help workers who are in that kind of struggling. That, I will pass it over to Kayla to share about the Alice Initiative and some of the actual current work.
Sorry, we are running low on time. We have 25 minutes left total,
Okay.
and we have a few commission items to cover, so.
Yeah, I'll be really quick. Hi,
Sorry,
I'm Kayla. So just to kind of briefly go over, the Alice Initiative is a 3-year grant funding 17 nonprofit agencies from 2022 to 2024 to uplift Alice households into economic mobility. And listed here are kind of the 3 priority areas that we landed on. There's a lot of different ways that you can serve Alice households. We are focused on the cost of living through financial stability and savings, focused on safe and affordable housing for local families and workforce and career opportunities. We have a vision and goal, but we can kind of skip that. A lot of that really aligns with the what is a good job, what it means to thrive locally and culturally here in our state. So year one, we have some successes that we can talk about. So with our 17 grantees, we convened nearly a dozen times in the last 2 years. We are now in year 3. And one of the things that came out of the first year of our meetings is just the amount of collaborations that these nonprofits have come to. They're truly forming a real network of Alice services in a way that we actually didn't anticipate. So collaborations and referrals amongst these nonprofits have increased by 233%. Advocacy work, 96% of our grantees are now engaged in advocacy work to help their clients uplift themselves and uplift the work that they do as nonprofits. And 15,741 individuals were served by grantees in year one, and these are individuals who are below the ALICE threshold. So this chart here shows different kinds of programs and services that are being scaled up by our grantees. And so as you can see, nearly all of them have increased between year 1 and year 2. Financial training programs have increased by 120%. Job training has increased. Advocacy here, that's advocacy by the clients who are now empowered to go out and advocate on behalf of themselves and get involved in legislative work. And one of my favorites, I love them all, but my favorite is the match savings increase, because that is a huge indicator of financial stability. The fact that clients are now needing savings accounts. We're getting clients to the point where they can have a savings account and everything a savings account needs. That's a safety net, that's relief for them. So the fact that we are getting clients to the point where they can open up a savings account, start putting money away, that means we're doing something right with our programs. Between year 1 and year 2, year 1 was really about laying foundational work and getting aligned with our grantees. And then in year 2, we decided, okay, where are we going to put our energy? We focus on policy or programs. What do we want to do? And these 5 different areas emerged pretty organically. And the ambitious cohort decided, let's do them all. So we've split into 5 different work groups, or hui, that are each focused on things that are going to contribute to the larger efforts of the cohort. So we have one focus on systems change or advocacy work and aligning all the different grantees with their legislative priorities. One around holistic data. We are not just trying to collect information about income and debt, but we're trying to understand well-being, understand what it means to thrive locally. Capacity building, so identifying who's in the room right now, who are we collaborating with, and who's not in the room. Who do we need to invite into these conversations? Wages and benefits, we fully recognize that many of the people who serve ALICE are also ALICE in the nonprofit sector. So how can we address this disparity to make sure that people serving ALICE are actually able to pay their own bills and able to find stability in their own lives? And then we have the ALICE awareness hui. One of the biggest challenges identified by the cohort is that people who are ALICE don't know that they're ALICE. Everyone knows that there's programs for people who are in poverty, but a lot of people don't know that there are programs for people who are working and they're just trying to improve their positions. 44%, that is a huge number. That's nearly half of us. And that is the core of our workforce. So these are the people who have, they did everything they were supposed to do, but they are ending up far from where they're supposed to end up. They're the people who went to school, got the degrees, got the entry-level job, but 10, 15, 20 years later, their income has barely increased and the cost of living has skyrocketed. That leaves no room for financial stability, no room to afford a home. So they're ALICE, right? It's really so many of the people that we encounter every day. It's people who deliver Amazon boxes, it's people who make our lattes, it's the people who educate our children, it's the first responders who our lives depend on sometimes. So the ALICE Awareness Hui is focusing on really bringing awareness to our community on who this is and the fact that we're not doing enough for them. I'm going to read you really quick, like super quick, a quick financial success story. It's not all doom and gloom over in Alice-town. So this is a story from Hawaiian Community Assets. They have a really beautiful series of programs, but they were working with a couple from Hawaii, Sarah and John, who were very typical of the ALICE population. They earned above the federal poverty level, but still faced financial constraints that made achieving safe housing a significant challenge. Both had steady jobs, but Sarah reached out to HCA for a comprehensive assessment of their financial situation. Clearly, they were above the poverty line, but they didn't have any room for savings or emergency or quality of life improvements. So recognizing that a one-size-fits-all approach wouldn't suffice, HCA had their HUD certified counselors design a tailored financial counseling plan for Sarah and John, provided budgeting assistance, connected them with some of their partners to do debt consolidation. They provided credit building strategies such as the Credit Builder Alliance and connected them to free credit reports and strategized a debt consolidation plan. By improving their credit score, Sarah and John can expect to become eligible for more favorable housing and loan options within 2 years. And through HCA's multifaceted approach, this couple experienced a remarkable transformation. They are now connected to financial resources that alleviated the significant financial burden and improved credit scores, empower them to consider homeownership in the future. So that's utilizing that network to get a couple that was considering, going in for emergency rent relief to maybe one day owning a home. And then my last slide. So our current cohort ends in 2024, but we are going to be having another 3-year grant cycle of the ALICE initiative. Again, this is long-term collective impact work. So this is going to be agency level funding. We are hoping that all of our current grantees return to us and that we make space for new grantees and partnerships. Our priorities will remain the same because sadly we have not solved all these problems. But in addition to that, the progress, it's slow and steady progress. We're hoping for more multi-sector collaborations, increasing resources, increasing stakeholders, because really this is all of us. It's everyone. ALICE impacts every single one in our community. If you were to remove 44% from our community, we wouldn't have them. So we need to do this for all of us. And this is just some ways you can contact us, our AUW.org website, and of course, United for ALICE to connect with that economic viability dashboard. Lots of good data on there.
Shocking to see, the poverty, like where it falls. The fact that, we talk about education and have college degrees, and yet there are quite a few families that fall into that threshold, and they're not, they could need that just extra edge. And yeah, I think that's pretty shocking to me.
That is one thing that jumps up from both the ALICE initiative, what the nonprofits have found, but also from the data is that it's not that people need all this help, it's they need a little help.
Yes.
And our partner KPB did some studies recently that suggested like $400 a month is the average of what will take a family to stabilize. And if you do that, it costs like $40,000 to get somebody back out of being homeless even for a short time. Giving them that $400 a month makes financial sense for everyone to prevent the problems in the first place. So I think there is some really interesting work around that, like what is that gap that would stabilize, as opposed to thinking they need all their housing or all the childcare. That's typically not true. It's a gap.
Is this systems change who we only working on policy, or is there looking at other types of systems change strategies?
At this point, they're mostly focused on policy work.
Thank you. If you'd like to go, feel free. Yeah, we really appreciate you guys, your participation today, and
Thank you.
$75,000.
So the next item is Greg. You're on, Greg, talking to us about your procurement findings.
There is a
Hey, guys.
handout that everyone received in their information that Greg had just sent over. It looks like this.
Sorry. Oh, hey, everyone. Sorry I can't be with you today. I'm in Vancouver right now, but let me go find a place to sit so I don't bother anyone here, the hotel. Okay. Here I am outside. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, great. Well, let me go. I guess I'm the one keeping you from leaving, so sorry about that. So before I begin, I had a few comments just on what I've heard today. I didn't want to interrupt, but let me just say just a few words and then I'll go on to my presentation. I guess when you think about jobs, I guess as a policy matter for the commission and for the city and for the state for that matter, if you think about it that big, to me, money is the first priority. You know, we can talk about job satisfaction and meaning in life and whatever, but if you can't even pay your rent, there's this concept in business school called the pyramid of needs, which means as you go up the needs pyramid, you can worry about more and more important things. At the top is enlightenment and meaningful life. At the bottom is just paying your bills, right? So I think as a policy, we should look at, you know, creating 9 to 5 jobs that can pay a lot of money. That's what I think, you know, like, I think everyone in the hotel industry, if the hotels didn't exist here today, wouldn't say, well, I want to do a hotel. I think they just, you know, they can make a good living working in hospitality. So that's why they do it. And as a city, we can do big things, you know, and that's our privilege. And so I think you know, getting into the big picture of things is really important. And, you know, I think finally meeting people where they are, which kind of goes to, you know, what's a good job? Well, I think that means that people in Hawaii are not greedy, you know, and I think that's our secret sauce. For a long time in the tech movement, we thought that that was our disadvantage, that our people were too lazy. I didn't personally think this, but you would hear comments, or not greedy enough. So why don't they want to work harder for money? And then I realized 20 years later, maybe the way Hawaii people are is better. And we should leverage that. And so I think there's a lot of industry that wouldn't survive in Silicon Valley because they can't make $1 billion on it. But Hawaii people will be very happy with those kinds of sectors. So anyway, I'll just leave it at that. Let me just pull up my, I didn't circulate my memo in time to be able to be shared with you. So what I can do is I can just go to it myself here and at least tell you what it says. My topic was procurement, which is one of the big ideas we discussed previously. And so they had asked me to, you know, think about it. And gosh, for some reason, I can't find my memo. Sorry about that. But I had put together a memo, and the first was sort of an overview of what's happening around the country with procurement, you know, because we like to look at other precedents. And there's quite a bit of literature on that, and much more can be researched on it. Oh, here we go. But one of the things that there's a whole list of preferences that cities give. You know, they can favor an industry like construction. You know, they can favor discounts. You know, they can favor companies that hire local people. I mean, there's a whole list of things that have been done. They can go on a communications program to advertise jobs, which is kind of what the business incubator is achieving. So, but I mean, they do all these things. And so I think the first step is to kind of see what the best practices are in these other places and how they work. And then the second thing is to think, well, you know, what is it that we want to do with such a program? What do we do now? You know, I don't know if there are any preferences, whether we give disabled people preferences or if we give minority groups or women, but, you know, we want to take inventory of what we do here now and then dream about, well, what do we want to do? What could we do? If we could wave a magic wand, and let's not get into the weeds yet of thinking why we can't do it. Let's just think about what we want to do. What would we do? And the most interesting thing to me that popped up, which I think if we can form a committee around this, that'd be great. But on a first glance, looking at, you know, I think the idea of giving local contractors a preferential discount on their bid would be interesting. And it goes around the country from 5 to 25%. So that means that your bid will be reduced by that percentage and then thrown into the pot to see who has the lowest bid, right? And I think the SBA and the federal level does this for their programs. And so that seems to me interesting because it cuts across the board. You're not discriminating. You're not just picking one sector. I think, you know, you have to be careful. You have to balance that against the need to have competitive bids, because you're spending taxpayer money. But I think the economic rationale is that it's going to help our economy, and so think of it as a common rate for local contractors. There's some things we should do to help our people and help them financially, and so I think that looked interesting to me. But again, I think that if a permitted permitted investigative group, I think that's what PIG stands for, were to be formed, they could research that and come up with a more comprehensive idea of what needs to be done. And then I guess how I see that committee working is it could take inventory of what's happening, think about what incentives they might want to recommend, and then make a proposal back to the commission, which would include what kind of resources do you need, because I think this would be a major overhaul of our procurement. And so I think you would need to invest some time and money into the process, whether that be with consultants who can help fashion the proposal, prepare some communications for the group, as well as legal, because the legality of these programs has been proven around the country. As long as there's a rationale for doing it, doing local preferences, and the rationale is, I think, usually that it helps economic development to hire your own people. But again, you don't want to make it so lucrative that outsiders don't bid, because then you're going to end up with worse bids, right? And so the locals have to measure up, but you just give them a little nudge, to give them a hand. And so so that's maybe by next meeting I can circulate my memo. I didn't produce it in time for today's meeting, but so that's pretty much what I had to say, Amy. If there's any questions or comments.
That's an action item. What is an action? Well, unfortunately, I mentioned to Greg, because we weren't able to post this 6 days prior, which has his recommendations in here, we will need to post it. Anything the commission considers for action needs to have that public posting. So I would love to provide further opportunity just to read through. We will get it posted after the commission meeting. That still means next time we could consider taking a vote on recommendations or specific action items.
How many, what is the percentage
Could we-
now of local businesses getting bids versus, I don't know, whoever? What, we know that.
That's one of the things Greg kind of notes in what the permitted interaction group would investigate.
Oh, I see, okay.
It seems like there's a lot of additional research that's needed. I mean, really great report, Greg. Thank you so much for spending time on this.
Thank
I really
you.
appreciate all the recommendations.
Sure.
You found. Amy, is it necessary? Is it best to do it through a permitted action group, or is this research something that it would be more efficient for a city employee to work on, because they have access to some of the city systems that maybe we otherwise would not have access to, the data and connections and all that stuff? I know you guys are shot in capacity as well, so.
Yeah, I think the permitted interaction group would be a part of the added capacity and provide direction for the work. We could certainly, utilize staff to, go and see some things to bring back. But I do think on what Greg has proposed, there's some discussion and thinking and refinement that a permitted interaction group, if you guys want to pursue this, would make progress on.
I think, on adding on like the ratio of local versus, non-local businesses, is how many jobs does it actually create and for how long? It'd be interesting to see, what the history has been and, identifying, factors in the past,
Yeah, often it's things that the city has not collected because it wasn't a priority, right? So that would be one of the things that would be an interesting feedback, like, is this information even available if the city through procurement hadn't been paying attention to that and keeping data on it?
The first step should just be like, what does the city use to measure this stuff? And maybe they don't do job, but somewhere there's a report with dollars, or I'm assuming that someone looked at something.
Yeah, it's a deeper dive that this permitted interaction group could have potentially the interaction with budget and fiscal services, corporation counsel, or others in the city to look at. We have recently hired a chief data officer for the city. We had a chance to meet her. I think she starts in the next couple months. But, you know, this could also be a recommendation from the commission, you know, in terms of the type of information we need, you know, to propose, update policies and other things in the city towards this end.
Amy, if I may add, the PIG doesn't have to, when it concludes its report, there could still be some loose ends, but I think it could push it along to a better place than it is now. There is a lot of available research online for the PIG to look at. I mean, I'm happy to participate in that, and if we had 2 or 3 people who are willing to put in a little time, we could probably move this along, and then maybe at that point we would need to hand it off to more internal research or even external consultant.
Would the Hawaii Data Collaborative?
I think we can do a lot.
Be a project for them? Would this be a good project for them, for us to pitch to them?
They kind of have their own priorities, and if you fit in their priorities, what we found, they've been willing to help us for free because in certain areas our work has aligned with theirs. But that is a potential, I think, again, something the PIG could investigate.
So then, is that the action items, this is other action items, and then creation of committed action. So the action item, whether or not we want to create a PIG.
Are we not there yet? Don't we publish or no? I think what we need to do is get this posted for the May committee meeting, and then at the next commission meeting, determine the course of action on the permitted interaction group and potential refinements that any Greg or any commission member might want to add to the list of recommendations for the work of the PIG.
Absolutely, that sounds good.
Is there any like research and stuff that can be done between now and then to set us up better for approving the PIG the next meeting?
Well, without setting up a PIG, I don't think 2 board members or commission members could work together, right? So
I'm asking about this on the staff side, maybe if that's something that maybe you folks are maybe interested in. Because then I think with a little more research, we might be able to fine tune like what is proposed for the PIG to work on. I mean, you could say the PIG works on all of this stuff, or we could say we've done this research and it looks like these ones might work the best. Maybe the PIG will focus on those things or something like that. Or the PIG could work on all of them. Not sure to push you to go one way or the other.
Yeah, well, I mean, I would hope that at least, so you have this today, we will post it again for the next commission meeting. Take a look. Greg does have some links in there. He also mentioned local self-reliance and other. If there's other links you could pop into the report before we post it, Greg, then people can take a look at some of the stuff, including our staff. And,
absolutely. Let me update the memo before you send it around.
Okay. Some level of information, like right now, I feel like it's big. Like I have no idea how much the city contracts out.
Right.
And
and
of that,
we won't before we vote on this. That's what the permitted interaction group.
Yeah. Well, because if the city's contracted out 100 million a year and 90 was construction related contracts, maybe this isn't even worth our time.
That's what I'm saying.
Because the contracting community tends to be like extremely local. There's not a lot of like international contractors flying in to take the release. I have no idea how big this opportunity is. You're telling me we gotta maybe start to figure that out.
Well, and I think we don't have to be certain because, you know, there's also the perception factor that, you know, we want to help our local businesses. So regardless of the dollar number, I feel like there's really good reasons to do this. You know, it's good to try to find out the dollar number so that we're not doing something really small, but I have a feeling like it's not going to be. maybe more people would bid if they realized they had a chance. And so yeah, let's postpone it. And by the way, just as a whole, there's a lot of good information presented today. And I think as we discussed at the last meeting, let's all think about what do we want to do about it. I really think this has to be a year of action, you know, and thinking about things to help.
Okay, thank you so much, Greg, for doing all that work. So we'll come back to that at the next meeting.
Okay,
Thank you. Is there anything?
thank you. Yeah.
I guess the only new business item, we're meeting on May 21st. The Office of Planning and Sustainable Development from DBET is coming, as is our Hawaiian regional representative for the Economic Development Administration, to talk about the Economic Development District and to talk about funding opportunities through the EDA. So we will work with Eliza and Olin on the agenda based on what we've just talked about today with the local contracting and procurement discussion, and try to better balance the time so we can have a little bit better discussion time.
Anyone want to make a motion to adjourn?
Second.
All right, we're adjourned. Thank you guys.
Thank
so
you.
much.
Ooh, way to rally.
Thanks for joining us, Greg from Canada. Thanks, Melody.
Sometime.
Hi.
Bye.
Thanks, Greg.
Bye-bye.
Aloha. Bye.